Hello, everybody. I am a retired secondary teacher. I retired in 2009, and during my life I had plenty of challenges. I had cancer twice. I played camogie for Galway and for NUIG and won an Ashbourne medal. And in 1969 I went into hospital in Galway to have a disc removed from my back, and I ended up paralysed from my waist down. And being me, I just got up and tried to work and tried to make a life for myself. But I found it very difficult at the beginning because knowledge of neurology and things like that in 1969 are not where they are today. So I ended up going to Beaufort in Dublin, which was part of the Loretta Sisters, in April, teaching. I was replacing a person who was out on sick leave. And I was teaching girls there, and most of their parents were professionals. And one of them was Dr. Flanagan, who worked in the Mater, and he asked to meet me because I had a caliper on my leg at the time and I was walking with a certain amount of lameness. And he advised me and made arrangements for me to go into the Church of Ireland's swimming pool in Rathmines and organised that I meet a physiotherapist. And when I left Dublin in June to come west because Dublin life didn't suit me, I was walking without a caliper. And I felt at that stage that I was able to go on a life of work. So after that I got a job teaching in Charlestown, and I was there for 38 years until I retired. Now, there were challenges because I didn't get the full power back in my legs. I only got it partially back. And I suppose if I was going for a teaching job today, I probably wouldn't be allowed into the classroom with some paralysis in my legs. But anyways, I got the job in Charlestown teaching, and I stayed there for 38 years. And during those 38 years, I had both my breasts removed, the first one in 1994 and the second one in 2009. And I taught there, and I was very happy there, and I got a lot of enjoyment and fulfillment from my teaching role. In the meantime, I had to work around the paralysis in my legs. I was driving a car, it was automatic, but I was told on a number of occasions that if you're in an accident, you may not be covered with insurance because of the condition of your legs. So I had to go and research and work out where I was going to go. So then I discovered that you can get hand controls into your car to help you to drive, and I was very happy with that. So around 30 years ago I embarked on using hand controls, and to be honest, to work from driving a car sort of using my legs to working to use my hands was a nightmare. The pressure and the braking and the acceleration with my hands and the feelings that I got from using my hands compared to using my feet was so different. I was a nightmare to myself on the road. But anyway, I conquered it, and today, only for my hands, I wouldn't be able to go anywhere. I use the hand controls in my car to get me around and to get me everywhere, and I'm quite content going out on the road. I'm insured to use my hands driving my car. Now, since I retired, I also play golf, but I use a buggy to get me around the golf course. In the last 15 years I've used a buggy, and I have a son and a daughter, and they're very successful at golf. I was a camogie player, as I said, and I use the buggy. That's one of my pastimes, is being involved in golf. The other one was when I retired, I got involved in writing. And first of all, I was involved in writing in Charlestown, and then there was a group of us that came together that met on a Friday mornings at 11 o'clock in the library, and we wrote, and we explored, and then we met Louise Kennedy, who worked in the library at the time, and she would come in and she would have an article to read, and it was from Russian writers to American writers to African writers to Irish writers, and she came in one day with a piece of Russian literature, and I think we were sort of all looking at one another as to where is this going. It was fairly high flowing. The words in it were, and the standards that was there was sort of beyond us. But anyways, we kept going with it. And Louise was a fantastic facilitator. She gave us mini lectures on doing research, and she also gave us talks on editing our own work. And I remember her saying once, I wrote a story about 2 years ago, and I'm on my 30th edition of editing it. We sort of looked at one another, the 30th edition of editing it, whereas we would write and leave it aside, and we would not even bother going back to read it or to even look at it. And she gave us 2 talks on editing, and then we went on to do some reading again, and then she came back to editing again. And I remember her saying to us, the most thing you learn in life is when you go back on your work and you look at it and you reread it and you see the mistakes that are in it and the grammar, the mistakes that you've made. She said, otherwise you're not advancing your writing. And then after she would normally give us an hour and a half, and we would have a half an hour to ourselves, and we would have tea and biscuits. And I remember us talking after she gave us that lecture, saying, well, we're not going to ever get anywhere if we don't write and spend some time going back and correcting it and editing it and things like that. And then one lady said, well, sure, I know nothing about grammar or full stops or commas. And I said to her, well, I don't know anything about commas either, because I did a short story once and I gave it to a cousin of mine who was now head of the Department of Education in UIG, and he read the story, and it was Christmas time, and he arrived into me one day and he sat down in front of me and he says, you don't like a comma? And I thought, God, what character is he on about? That's not my short story. I thought he was talking about a character in a short story. And I said to him, well, I said, are you sure you read my short story? Of course I did. He said, and you hadn't a comma in the place. Oh, I said, comma. And I thought, oh, good God, I never use a comma. When do you use a comma? And after that, and with the experiences we had with Louise and the writing and so on and so forth, I became very conscious of spelling, which I was always poor at, grammar, which was hit and miss, and the full stops and the commas and the apostrophes and all that as part and parcel of writing. And I thought, well, writing was just putting words down on a page and following on and following on and following on. And this was a whole new category of writing that I had to come to terms with. So then I did a 6-module course with writing.ie. They were all right. They were okay. I wrote the short story. They came back on email and they were corrected with very few comments. And then I did another module with the Writing Centre in Dublin, and Justine McCarthy was coordinating it. And by Jove, did she lay into us about grammar and spelling and not repeating words, and if you put a word in a sentence that you look at it and you research it, and is it the right word to go there, are there other words you can use? And she did a 6-module programme with us, and I mean there was 3 men I remember in England. It was through Zoom. There was 2 ladies down in Cork. There was 2 ladies in Dublin. I was the only one in the west of Ireland. And not great at technology, not good in technology. I was sitting at the computer every evening, apprehensive, because there was 1 or 2 problems with the internet in our area. Would it break down? Would it keep going? And it was a challenging course, but it was brilliant because she lectures in creative writing in UCD. And the experience that she had from dealing with students who are doing MAs in creative writing, and I think she also writes an article for the Sunday Independent, and she reviews books, but she really took no nonsense. Can I put it like this, from us? And I remember she gave us, she would give us a project to do, or a writing assignment to do each week. And I remember she gave us one to write something, a personal item, to take a personal item that was very personal to us and to write about it. And I remember taking the topic, a quilt. And I started talking. I wrote the story as though the quilt was talking. And I think she was taking a bit aback by it, because she said, "And where did you get the idea of using a quilt or using a ring?" Because I had spoken about a ring telling a story before that, and what it was doing during its life. And then here I took the quilt. And she says, "Where did you get this idea of getting articles to tell their story as if they were talking?" And to be honest, I wasn't able to answer the question. I hadn't a clue. I just didn't know, so I didn't. And then when the topic of hands came up, I thought, oh God, this is great. Now here I go again. I'll start telling the story of my hands and what they've been through and where I'm going with them and all that. And the story of my hands is, I've used them to cook, to bake, to wash myself, to clean, to sweep, to clean the houses. I've used them to correct assignments from school. I've used them to write up assignments for students. I've used them to write short stories. And most of all, and the most important section to me for my hands, is they help me to get around and they help me to drive. Now, I have arthritis as well as some paralysis in my feet, and I absolutely worry about the day will come when the feelings in my hand and being able to hold a pencil, because people talk, oh, why don't you do it in a computer? I'm not that technology literate, and a computer frightens me, but I use a computer for emails and buying online, unfortunately, and all that. But I write everything out first before I go near a computer, and holding a biro and writing is a precious thing to me, just the same as holding the steering wheel of my car in my hands is very precious to me. And I sort of dread the day that my hands will not be of any benefit to me. I hope that never comes, but they have been a precious part of my life, my hands have.